Welcome to Under Investigation, Stories Beyond the Badge. Join a seasoned detective as he steps away from the crime scene and into the lives of fascinating individuals. Through candid interviews and thought-provoking conversations, we explore the stories that shape us, covering personal struggles, triumphs, and the powerful intersections of faith, family, and life. Each episode brings unique perspectives and inspiring insights from people living diverse, authentic lives. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Under Investigation. I am your host, Mike Akins, and we have a couple of really interesting guests today. We have two. It's the first time I've had two guests at one time, so I had to scramble just a little bit to find my extra gear. But first of all, we have the topic today is we're going to talk about homeschooling. But first, I want to welcome two of my guests, two of my favorite homeschool mothers. One is biasly my wife. So, hi.
Hi.
And what's your name?
I'm Christine.
Oh, nice to meet you, Christine.
You're kind of cute, by the way.
Oh, why, thank you.
Awkward.
And then this is
I'm right here.
and this is Julie. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
Now you may recognize Julie's voice from other podcast episodes on another podcast we've been a part of in the past, and but this time she's going to come and talk about homeschooling, and so is Christine. So welcome both of you, and let's just dive right into it. So both of you guys homeschooled your children, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
That is correct, sir. And so let's just start with you, Julie, just a little bit. So how many kids do you have?
We have four kids. Two are now in 4-year college, so they're off, and so I have two still at home high schoolers.
Wait, homeschool kids go to college?
They do, and they we were just talking about this before. This is introduction, so I guess I'll just go into it. But we were talking about how I was talking to someone, just a public school teacher, just a few weeks ago, and his first question is like, the same thing. Like, you have kids in college. Like, how do homeschoolers go to college? Basically, how are they doing? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if kind of straight A's in college are all right, I think they're doing okay. I mean,
They have friends.
they have friends. They're doing just fine.
And we'll certainly dive into the myths and the stereotypes of homeschool kids here in a little bit. But I do find that funny because I hear that all the time. And Christine, how many children do we have?
Let me remind you, we have two children.
Oh, good.
One in college as well, a 4-year college. He's in his second year, and then one who is married and living out of state.
All right. Is the college bound child? Is he failing his classes, or how is he doing?
No. Quite the opposite. He is also getting straight A's.
Shocking. Is he social?
Very social, yes.
Sensing a theme.
Are we going to be sarcastic this whole podcast?
No, we probably should. It's just, honestly, it's a little awkward because, Julie and you are very good friends, and we've been married for a hot second, and it's just kind of weird having you on a podcast.
Thanks.
I should probably clarify that the college that my children are going to as homeschoolers and why they're excelling probably is because it's the college for knitting, homemaking, cooking, and wearing long skirts and keds.
Oh my God.
Keds.
I love it.
Oh.
It's the only reason why they're excelling.
They're doing great.
Do they have buns in their hair too?
Not yet.
I don't even have to be here. You guys just keep going. Oh, that's terrible. All right. So let's dive into just a little bit. So just so people kind of know, Julie, give us a little bit about your background, not necessarily where you live kind of stuff, but, what, you're married, what's going on, what kind of initially high view, what got you to decide to homeschool? Why did you choose that route?
Sure. I also have been married for a hot second, but to Tim, not anyone here. And we, we started having kids, and I don't know that it was anything we necessarily, pre-discussed before marriage. It just kind of happened as we were understanding as our kids are growing up and sending our first off to kindergarten into public school and then to first grade. It's like, wow, like this is only 6 years. And then now the rest of their growing up years is going to be with many hours over us. Like someone else is going to be raising my kid, basically. And so we approached it that way. It wasn't any anti-school thing. It wasn't any anti. It was like, we are tasked with discipling our children. And so we need them home in order to do that. And so we decided as a couple, that's what we're going to do. So once Kendra went, shouldn't use her name, my firstborn went through first grade, we're like, yeah, we're coming home. I think the first day that she went a full day, we had decided for the next year, like, yeah, this isn't going to happen.
So it was pretty quickly after the first appearance at public school that you were like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, and they did, the half-day kindergarten. And all my kids ended up in kindergarten, and then I had to reteach a lot of things, quite frankly, because I was scared to teach them reading. I was too nervous. I was actually a public school teacher before this, and I taught secondary, middle school, and high school was my licensure. And so the whole reading thing and, things like that kind of scared me a little bit.
I think your public school experience might come into play here in a little bit as we dive in further. But Christine, how about you? What was the conversation? I'm gonna stay out of this.
Yeah, I might use the word we though.
Yeah, that's fine.
Instead of I. Well, actually, Julie was a huge influence in the decision that we made. She and her husband handed us a video. Indoctrination was the name of this documentary.
Do you remember who wrote it or who?
I don't remember his name. But it was a dad and mom, and they had converted a school bus into kind of this traveling vehicle that they used, and they were homeschooling already. And they packed their kids in the bus, and they kind of went cross country and visited public schools. They talked with principals. They were kind of exposing things that were happening, trends that were starting with public schools. That you and I sat and watched that, Mike, and our eyes were kind of opened. Our kids were already in public school. Our daughter was going to be, she was in 4th grade at the time, and our son was in 2nd grade. So they had been in public school already, and I missed them terribly when they were gone. And I had it kind of a bent towards homeschooling, but I didn't want to be just simply because I missed them. I didn't want it to be for a selfish reason. And you weren't on board with homeschooling at that point either, but we both sat down, watched that documentary, and both of our hearts were changed, I think.
Was there anything specific in that documentary that was kind of like oh, wow, okay, I didn't know that, or any things that really became a decision point for you?
Well, I don't want to bemoan all public schools, but I think what hit me the hardest was when a principal said he could no longer in good conscience be a principal, and he had totally left that position and was going into, I don't remember if he was going to just go manage a hardware store or something. Like he was going to do something totally different. He didn't like the direction that public school was going into. And this was 2000 something, like it was a while ago. And I don't remember the exact details of it, but it was something where it just kind of hit me like, wow, I don't even think he was a believer in Christ. And this, just looking at it pragmatically and objectively from not even a faith worldview, saying this is going in a wrong direction. And I just can't do this anymore. That got me really thinking. But then, as Julie said, this task that we have of discipling our children and teaching them the ways, and they'll always come back to it. I mean, we have a role, and I didn't feel like in the role we had at the time we were putting into our kids, I didn't feel it was enough to actually fill that role and do it well.
So I want to come back to you. Julie, did you watch that documentary as well? I'm assuming you supplied the video, so you watched the video.
We did.
Was there anything in that video that kind of struck you?
I honestly don't remember it. And, that just I totally forgot about that whole thing. And I still stand by, we weren't, it wasn't because this anti-public school thing, but that was definitely a factor, thinking about, the public schools are anti-God by mandate. And
Mhm.
so how, yeah, I don't know that we could support that necessarily, but so it's interesting, all these factors that now hearing Chris, it's like, oh, that kind of came back around. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't remember who did that
So you
either.
both have used the word disciple, and when I think of disciple, I generally think of faith. So is faith involved at this point? I mean, is your belief system, did that come into play into these decisions as well?
Absolutely, for sure.
In what way for
I
you?
mean, well, so I did not grow up a Christian, and as a public school kid myself, I didn't understand that aspect of teaching a child in that way until I became a parent myself, came to the Lord while pregnant with our firstborn, and you later, Mike. And so um, to actually look through that lens of what are we teaching our children, there's definitely a huge, I mean, faith drives it, right? But we're still teaching them math and reading, and above all, I think we're teaching them about things of the faith, of course, but also a curiosity and the ability to teach themselves when they need to. So that's one of the biggest arguments against homeschooling, I think, and one that I kind of came up against several times was, well, you don't know advanced calculus, so how can you teach your kid advanced calculus? And I would come back with, I've taught my kid how to teach and how to get questions answered and how to investigate and how to learn. And that's why I feel like our son is doing so well in college right now, is because I'm not there to teach him everything, but I don't think I was there to teach him everything from maybe 7th grade on. Like, I would observe, I would check in, I would correct things, I would guide him and give him assignments, but he at that point could do it on his own.
Mm.
Um, and and so just kind of like providing those buffers, providing the instruction when needed, but really fostering that curiosity and that ability to teach himself is huge. And that applies to faith as well. I mean, we can't force our kids to believe. They have to come to that faith on their own and make it their own.
Mm. Interesting. Julie?
Absolutely. Faith was the first, as we talk about discipling, that's exactly what it was. Faith that, is first and foremost and top priority, but it's also all encompassing. And so if your faith doesn't reach the realm of, I mean, I love this, that there's some sort of distinction between God and science in the world. It's like, well, God is a creator of science, I mean? So it's all encompassing in everything. There's faith. And so obviously that was what drove us to it and what sustained us and kept us going, just from a correct worldview, I guess. And I'm going to just hop back to, and I did, and I believe it, and I know it, that the public school as a system, by mandate, by definition, is anti-God. But I want to be careful too, because I was a public school teacher. I know lots of public school teachers and other people, and it's a hard job, and it's getting harder. And so I want to credit that. And it's not like everybody is out there intentionally like being anti-God, and trashing that. It's just, it's a system that's been set up that most people don't know they're maybe even a part of or in, or they're trying to be the difference makers. And being a public school teacher, if you do it well,
Like,
there's people
like
that don't.
salt.
If you do it well, is an amazingly hard job, and kudos to those teachers who and other administrators and paras and all that do that, right? So I just wanted to clarify that before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to bash anybody, but there is a system in place that we need to recognize.
Yeah. Well, the reality is, all of us have friends who are teachers, and we've all had conversations and learned. I guess I'll speak for myself. In the conversations that I've had with, friends of mine that are teachers, or their frustrations on how they're so restricted on so many things. So many things. And, and as you guys know, I was an SRO in a school for a few years, and I mean, I just shake my head. I mean, I wasn't a teacher, but just to sit back and watch it, I saw the system, and the system is maddening for me. Those are my words, but yeah, it was difficult. I mean, I know teachers who are certainly Christians who subscribe to the thought of, if not me, who. So I understand that, and I want to be very clear that this isn't just because you're a homeschooling family doesn't mean you're necessarily anti-public school. And I think that's one of the myths that are out there, is that, oh, I hate public schools, so I'm a homeschool. No, not necessarily. I mean, I've heard from both of you, the common theme that I've heard so far is like you want to be more involved with your children. And if you ship your children off for 8 hours a day, what do you get? 3 hours a night? Somebody else is raising your child. So yeah, no, I totally understand that, and I'm glad you made that clarification because it's certainly true, certainly true.
Yeah, and I think one helpful thing that I heard when we first started this journey actually is Vodi Bakum, just talking about this kind of same thing. Like, if you think you're pulling your kids from public school because you're anti this and to bubble them and protect them from sin and the world and things like that, just remember what environment they're in. I myself am a sinner. They're dealing with seeing mom sin and dad sin. You know what I mean? It's not like we're protecting them.
Right.
They're,
Yeah.
So it was good to have that perspective. And as I talked to other people that, thought, and there's definitely an aspect we didn't try to protect or bubble. There is some of that. Like, there are things that kids have to confront in public school that they're just too young for. And so there is that aspect. However, there is a portion of homeschooling families, and I'm not going to, it's up to them. And, but that might be seen as like taking them away from the world and protecting them. And it's like, well, you are the world, you know what I mean? And so, that was very helpful for me to distinguish that from the get-go.
So as you guys both, kind of made that decision, like, okay, here we're gonna homeschool, right? The decision's made. What are your? I mean, because I'm thinking as the person who's listening to this episode right now, what are the first steps? I mean, what do you do? Like physically, what do you do, Christine? What did you do?
Well, to be honest, I kind of defaulted to public school things because it's the only thing I knew. So I hunted for a curriculum. I got a calendar out, a daily calendar, and planned out every second. We sat down. We had school time. We had lunch time. We had going outside time. And then I think it was a bunch of us homeschool moms in the community got together a few times, and it was just in a home, and all the kids got together and they played, and we discussed what we were doing, and my eyes were opened to a few other families that were doing things a little bit differently and being a little more maybe responsive to the way their kids learn and their styles of learning and their interests. And I won't say we take it as far as unschooling because it's not the case at all. And I think in some cases there are cases that, that's fine. But for us, it was, okay, we're not going to totally ditch the calendar. We're going to have like gray timelines and blurry timelines. And what are you interested in learning? How do you learn? So I started looking at aptitude and being responsive to my kids. And we still had curriculum. We still had all of the subjects, but we organized our day a little differently, and we're a little flexible. We got outside of the house more. We went to places. We interacted with people. We were in the library for hours on end, and I wasn't itching to get back home so we could do math because that was on my calendar. We were much more flexible. I was less stressed out. The kids were less stressed out, and we just went from there. And every summer we got really excited to approach the year again. Okay, what subjects are we going to do? You want to study roller coasters and go to Valley Fair? Do we want to do that? Do we want to go to the zoo? And in the meantime, you're bringing your sketchbooks, and we're learning about animals, and you're sketching and you're writing, and we just kind of integrated subjects into other subjects that they were already interested in, instead of mandating this is what we're going to do from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and then from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And then, kind of ditching that schedule that I had just been so accustomed to growing up.
Were you worried at all that gray, that flexibility would later impact them as far as timelines, deadlines? Like in the business world, right? I mean, you'll get a request from your boss, and hey, I need this done at 2:00, and so you're like, whoa, I gotta do X before 2:00. Was there ever concerns that I don't know, like lack of responsibility by being so carefree on about time limits or timelines?
Here and there, I guess, but not really. We still had things that needed to get done by certain times,
Okay.
right? And we would start school after they had cleaned their rooms or whatever chores they had that morning, and or we'd build those into the day. And I'd say, okay, we're going to do this until this time. You still have expectations they needed to meet,
Okay.
but it wasn't so hard set for me as this teacher and as the mom throughout the day to be bound to a certain schedule hour by hour.
All right, Julie, how did you guys prepare? It sounds like Christine pretty much went down a path and went, "Oops, I don't like that path," and went and switched it. What was your guys' initial journey like?
That's a ditto. And part of, when I talk about homeschooling, and I always did, even when the kids were younger, it's like, well, it must be so easy for you because you were a teacher, so you can do it. I can't do it because I never was a teacher. I'm like, actually, being a public school teacher was a detriment because you don't know what you don't know. And I was ingrained in that system, right? Not really understanding. I actually, as a teacher, and this is to my shame or the shame of education in the teaching college, whatever it is, didn't really understand what education was. And when you step back from that and understand that the way we've designed things and what was ingrained in us in the public school, and even as a teacher that I didn't even see, was education is a means to an end for some sort of production. When I understood that the light bulb went off, when I understood that learning and education really is that Latin triumvirate, right? It's truth and it's beauty and it's goodness that changed everything. And then yes, there's subjects and topics, but you just approach them differently and you integrate them like Christine was saying, they're integrated into everything, touches everything. It's more of a maybe a holistic approach. And I was the one as my kids are like in second and first in grade where I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you need to understand what time is. You have to be on time, and because this is the way our society works. And so I would charge them money like the first year if they were not in their desks seated ready to go at 8 a.m. I know.
Hardcore.
It was awful. Isn't that
Chris's
terrible?
jaw just hit the ground. She didn't know that, I don't think. Did you get rich?
How
Did you get rich the
stupid.
first? Did you get rich the first year?
No, they were pretty good about it. But I mean,
I
just
love it.
That's dumb, right? And so, and as far as like that kind of thing, that's what I'd hear the pressure coming from, family members that were very integrated in the public school. And my dad was a public school teacher, retired as such. And, other family members like, well, you have to be sure that, they're not tardy and they understand blah, 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 blah.
Well, that was the reason behind my question with
Right.
Christine was like, that's a mindset that coming, from the business world, so to speak, deadlines, timelines, everything's based on time.
But if you look at the broader picture and you teach them responsibility, that's not an issue. You don't have to teach them to be on time. You teach them responsibility and work ethic. And I've, my kids by I don't know when they started this. It's like, you know what? I let them sleep in. They got all their work done as long as they had their work done and we were doing the things and we had definitely scheduled things. But, then I'm like, oh, should I be doing this? You always question it. You should always be questioning yourself and your methods and what you're doing. However, seeing that play out, I had girls that then did PSEO, which is, you can go to college and schools. It's kind of like dual enrollment in other states if there's out-of-state listeners. But so they were going to campus. I didn't have anything to do with that. They would get up and leave at 7 a.m. to drive an hour to campus and never were late. My kids have never been late for their day jobs for work. They also have always had jobs and they've never been late because they were taught responsibility. They weren't taught specifically, you must be on time. We didn't have to if you have the general principle. And all of life, that you are responsible, that you have a good work ethic.
I think that's a really good way of reframing it.
Yeah.
It really is. So just to the potential out of state people, I have people listening in Russia who I don't even think probably have homeschooling abilities. But to be fair, we are in Minnesota, and Minnesota has its its own set of rules versus other states.
Mhm.
Right.
So let's talk about that just a little bit. Okay, when you're making the decision about homeschooling, Minnesota has its own set of rules. So Julie, I'll come to you first. What kind of rules does Minnesota have as far as like grading, documentation? Do we have to do anything in this state? I mean, I know some other states like you have to send in curriculums to the state and get them approved. And what does Minnesota have?
Right. Thankfully, somehow Minnesota has avoided most of that. We need to do standardized testing every year. If your student is, I think, 2 years behind, then it needs to be reported to the state. Otherwise, those records need to be available. You need to get the standardized test. You basically have to inform the school district you're in that you intend to homeschool. You sign this form and say, this is a standardized test we're going to use this year. And I guess I picked decent standardized tests because it's never been not approved, right? We don't have to send curriculum in and things like that. So there's advocates trying to do that, which would be so detrimental. But we have been somehow very blessed in Minnesota not to have to do that yet.
So the snickery, so to speak, is because Minnesota is generally a pretty liberal state, and this is an area that they're not really controlling,
Right.
overly
Even
controlling. Is that
compared to Wisconsin? I mean, I think it is easier to homeschool. I think you have by October 1st,
Mm-hmm.
because you could even start the school year, decide you're going to homeschool, and pull the kid, and you have until October 1st to submit one form to your superintendent in your district that says you're intending to homeschool and this is the test you're going to use at the end of the year.
is it
And-
pending approval or is it more of a notification?
Technically, but it's a
Mm.
notification, not approval to homeschool. Like you don't have to, but as far as the standardized test, technically it needs to be approved by the district.
Yeah, I was wondering about the
Right.
approval to homeschool. You don't have to get approval. You can
No.
just it's more of a hey, I'm going to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will say there is a whole packet that gets mailed to you after your first year of homeschooling and every year following that has all kinds of forms in it that ask for all kinds of information. But the only one that's required to be submitted to the state is the one form that goes to the superintendent. Can I just back up and talk about standardized testing
Yeah,
a little bit?
absolutely.
So, and when Julie mentioned that, it kind of brought me back to another reason that we decided to homeschool was that our daughter was having trouble, some test anxiety and things with all of the. I mean, it just seems like there's so much more standardized tests than there were when we were kids, Julie. Like, I mean, I remember maybe one every couple of years. We'd sit down, we'd take a day, and we'd do a standardized test. And now it feels like there's multiple times a school year where they assess the kids, they have the standardized tests, and kids talk like they're comparing each other's scores, and our daughter was just starting to find her identity in how well she was doing for these tests, on these tests.
Mhm.
And then it just seemed like as soon as one test was done, they were talking about, okay, now we need to start preparing for the next one, and here's some drills and math, and she would come home crying
Mm.
because it would be, we just did a test and now we're being tested again and I don't know it, and she would not get the greatest scores on these things, and it would break my heart because I was watching our daughter find her identity in that in comparison to other kids and how is she doing on these tests, and it was so much stress and pressure, and she was in 3rd grade, 4th grade, right? Like it was like, and this was not going to end. It was going to be every year. And so getting back to like learning styles, she's not one that can look at a sheet of questions and recall very easily what she knows. She's a smart kid. She does learn a ton of stuff and can recall, but you got to talk to her and ask her the questions. She's more of an auditory learner. She's a visual learner. And so I had to learn to respond to that learning style in my kid. and pick a standardized test at the end of the year. That was a conversational style.
And I want to be kind of clarified. This is the kid who's married and doing very well.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
it works
Yep.
out.
She graduated. She, all her standardized tests were. I mean, she passed with flying colors, but we had to tailor our education to our child rather than the education being one size fits all for all children. It just didn't work
Mm.
for our daughter. It didn't work. And had we not realized it, and I just can't imagine the continual heartache and stress that would have been placed on her year after year after year until she graduated.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to get back to that and talk about that a little bit, because I think it's important to understand that homeschooling is also about tailoring an education to every kid is different.
Yeah. Excellent point. Excellent point. How about you, Julie? What did you find that same kind of freedom with your kids? I mean, you have had 4 kids go through, and I can't imagine they're all, I don't know, they all learn the same way. I mean, did you find that same freedom?
Absolutely. Once I figured out not to take the curriculum with a checklist and be sure they've done all the check their boxes. Literally, our first curriculum was checking boxes. Like, okay, you did this, you read this, and all that, and not leaving them behind. And I think being in the classroom teacher, that was hard for me, and I know it's hard for a lot of teachers who know that students have different learning styles. It's part of your training, right? That students do have different learning styles. But how in the world can you take a class of 30 students and see 150 students a day and be able to cater to every learning style? I was able to in the classroom to start doing that, but it's not like individual, but to have different approaches to projects and things like that. But that took a lot of my time as a newer teacher. I mean, we're talking that I would be at school until 10 p.m. most nights doing things like that. That's not sustainable. Once I got married and had kids, obviously you can't sustain that. So my heart goes out to teachers who understand this and can't really do much about it. So with my own kids, yeah, it was great. It's like, oh, you don't understand this part of math. We get to stop and really, really figure this out. But you understand this part of math that you might be covering in your public school for 2 weeks and be bored because you already know what you're doing. So it is that catering, and then there's other, because we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. And so, okay, well, you don't get this. Great. I mean, this is how we find out, and we get to stop and do it at their pace, and their learning style approach, because obviously, this isn't logically possible, but you have 4 kids, they're 4 completely opposite kids. And to be able to take that and help them learn, and part of the homeschooling thing with different ages is like the little one room classroom, really, where some of the older kids get to start teaching the younger kids. And if you think of teaching is the highest form of learning, which it is, if you're able to teach it, that only bolsters what they're doing too. So it was fun to see that they'd have maybe studying the same thing sometimes, in like a social studies, a science, but just different levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that was great. And yeah, I love that, you go to the zoo or Valley Fair. I mean, homeschoolers have the best field trips. Let's be honest.
Yes, we do.
So, you'd mentioned teaching is the highest form of learning. Just kind of on that same topic, what do you do on a subject? And I know Christina mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but what do you do on a subject that maybe you are not confident in? I mean, if I had to teach a trig class to my kid, I'd be like, I'm tapping out.
Yeah, we never got to trig.
I'm glad you mentioned trig.
Save that for college.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Every year is different, right? And I'm not going to tackle advanced calc. And I was, my first one coming up into trig, I was actually really excited because I loved trig. Of
course you did.
I love proofs, and I was so excited to yay, you're in trigonometry. I get to now dive in with you and do this. And she came back, and she was in a co-op at this point, which that's always an option, right? Every year was different. As long as because every year had its own set of things or where they're at. Anyway, so she got to trig, And she brings it home like the first day, and she's like, "Okay, I need help." And I'm so excited. I'm like, "Yes." And I looked at it. I'm like, I don't remember a thing. I don't remember a thing about trig. And you know what? She did really well in trig. And I would go back in the book with her and we kind of reteach things or look at things. But eventually, again, it's like you're teaching them to teach themselves. And she was able to pick it up just through the textbook and figure it out. And, the accountability for trig at that point was in someone else's hands as far as grading and things like that. And she did well. But it wasn't because of me who was so excited. And then I'm like, oh, I don't really know. I don't even know what a tangent and cotangent and sine and cosine is anymore. So, and I still can't tell you. So there are other resources, and you have to be smart to use those resources. Not think like, oh, I know advanced calc, or I can figure this out. Well, don't be dumb. Use the resources that you have, and there's loads of homeschool resources.
And some things like when we were ordering our curriculum at the beginning of the year, there'd be whole packages, and they're designed to complement one another. And the beauty of some of these curriculums, especially the one we used, My Father's World was what it was called.
Thank you. I was going to ask that.
I can't believe I remember that. It seems like so long ago. But so we did a little course on botany. I never took botany. I never studied botany before, but the course was designed to be a read aloud, and then followed by little exercises that they would do in worksheets and things, and we'd go outside and study and put into practice what we had talked about. But I was learning really cool things alongside my kids. Like, did you know that bees see in infrared? And every day they're told by the hive, their queen, which flowers to go out and collect pollen from.
What? What?
Oh, that
What?
scared me. Yes. And so Monday might be roses, and they're bypassing daylilies to go get rose, and then they come back, and the next day might be daylilies, and they may be further away than the lilac bushes, or it's but they see in infrared, and the flowers are designed that we can't see. They have big that it's only seen in infrared, big spots right in the middle, right where the pollen is. I never knew that until I read aloud all this stuff with my kids.
You're learning right alongside of it.
Yes. And okay, so I may be an exception. I love learning. I'm a geek when it comes to learning new things. I just
We're
love that
both nerds.
process. Yes. So we're not alone. But, and so when it's a topic that you're not as familiar with, the curriculum is designed to also kind of teach you as you go along with your children, at least in those first years. But then, as Julie said, we've talked about before, as they get older and they get involved in co-ops, but especially on their own, the curriculum is designed also to help them be independent learners.
Okay.
And to seek out other resources when they need help with stuff.
So, Julie, a couple times, or actually you mentioned it once and Chris mentioned it once, co-ops. For those who may not know, I want to talk about resources for a little bit. What's a co-op in the homeschooling world? What is that?
Well, it's as broad as you can make it. There's so many different levels of, hey, this is your full curriculum, and you meet once a week, and then everything you do to the next meeting, you have work assigned, or you have to have this project done and things like that. So there's that level.
But like structurally, what is it?
Yep. So
People
it's,
meet? Do they email each other? Or what does that look like?
I think it looks like a lot of all those things can be part of that. But yeah, your typical is you're going to meet once a week. Maybe when they're younger, it's, there's some co-ops that are just loose and they might offer, hey, this is kind of fun time. This is Phi-Ed time. This is a special science that you might not get at home.
So are people, I guess my question
moms
is,
are teachers, or they might pull and pay someone.
Who is going into a co-op? I mean, is it only my family? Is it families from across the area? I mean, what
area families? Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So homeschooling families that agree to get together as groups?
Absolutely. So there's some that are very loosely based, and the level goes up, right? We did what's called, and it's not a co-op. I'm not supposed to say that because this organization would get mad at me, but we did classical conversations for a few years. And when the kids were younger, that drove their curriculum, what we were doing. as like my older kids who went through the higher levels of that absolutely was what they were doing. A fantastic system, by the way. And
And what was that called again?
classical conversations. And so homeschooling, you can do it for freebies, or you can put some money in, and you're going to invest money in curriculum and things like that. Homeschooling is a sacrifice. It's not all sugar coated. I mean, we always joke, probably in your house too, like my husband was the principal, and there were
I
times
was the superintendent.
yes, I guess I end up being the principal, but when he offices at home when he's home and not traveling, and I mean there were days that the teacher was in the principal's office with tears, like, this is so hard, I don't know what I'm doing, it's just it's not for the faint of heart, but anybody can do it, and it's so worth it. It's worth the sacrifice of time and money, and maybe some sweat and tears.
Yeah. So resources, I've heard co-ops, I've heard classical conversations as a resource. And you had mentioned a resource earlier, Chris, that you used, and that was what, My Father's World?
That's a curriculum company. Yeah, there are many.
Are there any other ones that you personally used?
Oh, I'm sure. I just can't remember the names of everything. What was the math?
Oh,
There's tons of math
Singapore
ones.
math.
Singapore
There's
math is
Fred.
the one.
There's so
Fred is awesome.
there's almost too many resources out there,
There's a ton.
and so you have to. I remember going to the the homeschooling association stuff where they have got all these curriculum booths, and like I quit going after. I think we went once or twice. I'm like, this is overwhelming and this is too much, and I'm gonna freak out if I see all this stuff. So you do. I mean, I had to like focus in, like, okay, you know what, this works, so we're gonna stick with this. I don't need to always be looking around either. But yeah, there is so much, and even obviously now you've got Khan Academy online. You've got lots of video, lots of YouTube things, and even the public schools using Google Classroom. A lot, sadly, a lot of their teaching is done via like YouTube videos now, so you can find stuff out there to instruct. That can be free too.
And what's that Minnesota organization that we belong to?
Mache.
Mache. And
Yeah.
and do you know what was it? MACHE?
Yeah.
Is that
Yep.
.org?
Like
In case-
think paper mache. I mean that was the word MACHE.
All right, probably .org, I'm guessing. In other words, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then another, I know the national, what, HSLDA?
Yeah. Yep.
Or
That's
that was
exactly right.
another big one.
Yep. HSLDA.
And then I know we had a membership there, and I just, on the legal side of things, I remember it was like if they came after us, we would have legal defense.
Again, yeah, that's maybe for states that have a little more stringent restrictions on homeschooling. I mean, like we've talked, Minnesota, we've never once had to call that hotline.
Yeah,
Nobody was coming to our door.
I was surprised at how loose Minnesota was with their restrictions on homeschooling. I'm glad. And maybe it's because, I don't know, I mean, you think historically farmers or something, I don't know. I mean, that was something that was needed. So another kind of, maybe this doesn't necessarily fall under resources, but it kind of does. Another question that I've asked people, or people have asked me, is how do you find time to do it? I mean, are all these, and maybe I'm going down the stereotypical statements, but are all these moms, are they all stay-at-home moms? I mean, are you working full-time? You work part-time? People work from home? I mean, what's the setup look like generally for a homeschooling family that's trying to teach? I mean, are you at work all day long and your kids are running around the house by themselves? I mean, what does it look like? Or what did it look like for you guys?
Well, for us, and Julie mentioned this, I mean, we really had to look at our lives and really look at homeschooling as an investment we were making, a sacrifice we were making for our kids in response to God's calling for us to homeschool. And so it really was a stay-at-home mom situation for me, but I also taught piano in the home. We found ways to make ends meet, and just like when you decide, if you decide to be a stay-at-home mom, whether or not you choose to homeschool, all of a sudden your lives shift with maybe not even you realizing the sacrifices you're making to make that happen, to make it work. And then you would take overtime. You would, you would do extra shifts. You do what we would need to do to make ends meet. And we never, if I remember correctly, we didn't really feel like it was a huge struggle or that we were, barely getting by. I mean, you give up, whatever you have to give up to make it work, and it's always so worth it. But yeah, I took on extra kids to teach piano too, and we'd barter a lot. We'd exchange things with their homeschool moms. I mean, we'd help each other out with, babysitting or whatever that looked like for different things, and you just make it work.
Hmm. What again, I'm trying to think of what people would want to know about, from homeschooling. Let's talk about some of the myths and stereotypes. I mean, there's so many that pop in my head already, but I want you guys to address them. What's the most common question, Julie, that you get as a homeschooling family? Like you're out and about and somebody learns that you homeschool. What is the question that you're always going to hear?
Socialization.
What are your kids going to do?
I
Without a
know.
doubt.
How can they function in society?
The checkout lady at Target.
I
They
remember.
have no shame about it.
I remember that lady. I do. I was so mad. But anyways, I'm not here to give my insights.
Yeah, and suddenly everyone's an expert on education. Because
Everybody.
They've got this one question about socialization.
So what do you tell them? I mean, what would you tell them? Or were you nice?
I don't think you have to tell them anything, because it's like my kid just interacted with adults in the room where most kids don't. They are socialized, and we didn't, they have friends. Our kids just happen to be like sporty kids, so they were always in sports. My kids, and thankfully Minnesota has this right too, that we're able to let our kids do like public school sports and band and orchestra, and they did that too. So, but that's not necessarily why they're socialized, because suddenly they went to public school things. They're socialized because a very wise homeschool mom who was homeschooled herself right from the beginning said something that's always stuck with me. And so I have to give credit to Callie, not myself, but we're raising our kids to be adults. We're not raising them to be kids. And so to see that end result, like my 8-year-old can talk to an adult, can call on the phone, can order food without without putting head down, things like that a lot of kids actually can't do. How do you say they're not socialized? Because we are raising them to be adults. And when kids sometimes are just in their peer groups, they act like their peer group. And yeah, there's age appropriate things and behaviors, but the aim is not for them to be 15-year-olds. The aim is for them to be adults. So socialization, yeah, they can function in the adult world much younger than most other kids, quite frankly. So I didn't really have to answer the question. It's just like, well, look at my kids. Yeah. They're fine. And I didn't get that question from people like family members, because they know our kids.
Right.
And
right.
We had, from the other side of the family, who's also I'm from a family of public educators from both sides, my husband's side too. And they really questioned. And then after a few years, they go, oh yeah, we see all the benefits. It's amazing what has happened to your children and how they can interact in the adult world, even as kids.
What are your thoughts on that question?
I would just ask all those moms that continually complain about their kids coming home from school, their kids being on the bus, and they've picked up words, swear words or whatever that they've never heard in their house, but somehow now they've picked this up, and they're being socialized by the same age kids as them. So they're always going to be socialized. It's just a matter of who is socializing them. And so I remember growing up, and organized sports was a thing, but not to the extent that it is today. It's a lot of same age kids today doing sports year round with same age kids. But growing up, especially during the summers, we would get together, and all the kids in the neighborhood, all ages, would do a pickup game of whatever, whether it was softball or kickball or game of tag, or you're running around the neighborhood, and hanging out with kids of all ages, and the older kids would decide, what the rules were, and you'd listen and you'd respect. And for the most part, I mean, kids are kids, whatever. And you'd see that a little bit now in the summers, but not as much because they're off doing their sports with other same age kids, whether it's club or community ed, and they're always segregated in the classrooms by age. And you'd mentioned, Julie, the one room schoolhouse of kids teaching other kids, and I just love that about homeschooling, that you can keep that up. And I saw socialization happen between our older daughter and younger son, and y- you know the relationship that they have today, they're super close. And but the socialization that happens between kids of different ages, between adults and kids, and yeah, I would be the first to say that I think that homeschool kids are around adults a lot more than public school kids are, generally speaking. And it would just make me laugh. We would go to, like I said, Target, and it'd be in the middle of the day, and the lady at the checkout would be talking to my kids, and what are you doing? Did you go to the doctor today? You have
Why
"Nope,
aren't you in school?
yep. No, we're homeschooled, and we just learned about da 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 bees. They see in infrared. Did you know? And then she would look at me, this checkout lady, and say, "Well, aren't you worried about socialization?" And all I would have to say is, "Well, did they just converse with you? Did they just have a conversation with you? How many 10 and 12-year-olds would do that coming into Target? Would they talk to you like that and tell you what they were learning?" And it would just make her stop and think about that for a second. But
I know
it's just-
exactly
it's
which
funny.
lady you're talking about.
It's the
She's still
conditioning
there.
of society to ask the question. They still have to ask the question. Well, how are you making sure they're socialized?
Yeah.
They are. They just demonstrated that before you. So
Yeah. So that's just so when you hear that question, because that's the question that I've heard it 100 times if I've heard it 10. I mean, does it get under your skin or you just kind of blow it off? I mean, how do you? Does it bother you when you hear that question?
No.
now that we know how to answer it, at first it bothered me because
Mhm.
I took it as kind of an attack on homeschooling,
Oh,
and I would get defensive. In my head, I wouldn't always say what I was thinking, but and then today I could answer it very easily, and I almost welcome the question because we're teaching people about homeschooling in that regard.
Yeah, and kids have different personalities. So a personality they have that might be a little more introverted or shy is also going to play out in the public school, and they're the shy kid at school. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like there's this different expectation for homeschool personalities too, right? It's interesting. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I think Chris's point of your kids are being socialized, but to what and to whom and by whom is
Mhm.
is the question. And so,
it's a great way to frame it. To look at it. They're getting socialized, just by who?
mm,
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it a good way or a bad way? Yeah. No, totally. Um, Real quick question about like teaching. Classroom work. Julie, did your husband get involved in any of the teachings or any of the classroom work at all? I know you guys, just structurally at your house is different. I know he travels quite a bit and stuff.
right. There's a lot of travel time, so not really. We would talk through things, but he didn't have that ability with how his job is structured and life is structured. So, and thankfully, because of how his job is structured and the blessing of that job, I was able to be the at-home homeschool mom. So, although it was a obviously financial sacrifice, it still worked.
How about you, Chris? Did your wonderful husband do anything? Not that Julie's husband isn't wonderful, because I think he is wonderful, but
Well, I think you were able to pick up a couple subjects that you were passionate about, and it was great to have you do that. Um, driver's ed. You did driver's ed with our daughter, and then some civics things and
Yeah.
politics and the U.S. Constitution, and teaching through that was great.
I did enjoy that. So, yeah, I did get to teach the Constitution. I enjoyed that. I actually put an outline together for that. That was fun, and then talked about the different amendments and so forth. But, yeah, things were fun. I just my schedule allowed a little more, so it's. But driver's ed, that was tough for me. I'm I'm not gonna lie, that was difficult, but it was fun. Um, when you kind of look back, I mean, you're not at the super tail end of things by any means, Julie. I mean, we're done, with that chapter. And you still have what I think two
Mhm.
left. Um, is there anything that you wish somebody would have told you, or some bit of knowledge that you would have had um, when you began that you could maybe pass on to somebody who's thinking about homeschooling now?
I think for me, people told me, but I didn't really understand it and didn't take it to heart for a while. It's just the amount of grace that's required for yourself,
Mm.
for your kids, to not push everything at once. Even starting a school year, it's like you don't have to start every subject the first week to kind of gradually get into things. To know that there's flexibility. You don't pick a curriculum and then have to stick with it. But just the grace to understand that if you are doing this for the right reasons, if you're um, in prayer, it takes a lot of prayer and a lot of wisdom that way. That God's got it, and just to have that grace and that faith in the Lord, that He's got your kids, and even those little things that you think about, like the timing, right, not being tardy and things like that, the general principles being taught, and just having that grace in your family, letting things sometimes slide, and and if things aren't working, to be able to pivot and just find a different way for
Yeah.
things to work, because it all works out, because we're always caught in the urgency of the moment, and to not be caught in that urgency of the moment and to see the big picture is the greatest piece of advice for me. And right now we do have two left at home. One, he's doing online school.
Mm-hmm.
It's a homeschool curriculum, but it's online, so they kind of uh, grading and assessments and all that is there. And so I've really stepped back, and like you guys, by the time they're in seventh grade, they're self teaching anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And we had different curriculums, and my kids didn't hit online stuff until this last one, because it works for where we're at right now. My third child is actually spending a year at our local public high school, and that's fine too. That's what she wanted to do. Said,
I
"Giddy
think
up, let's try
I
it."
think that backs the fact that you're not anti-public school.
Right.
It's just it's a different style. Christine, how about you? Do you um, anything that you wish, like I had asked Julie earlier, anything that now that you wish you would have known at the beginning of the homeschooling journey?
Yeah, I talked about the day-to-day calendar, kind of abandoning that expectation of very strict regimented time schedule, and realizing that on a grander scale, even a week off here and there of doing no school turns into some school, because life is school.
Mm.
And it's okay to take a week off from the curriculum, to get outside, to go take a walk, to explore, to kind of like reset every once in a while, especially if there's something stressful happening in the family, if there's a death in the family, if there's a pet that has died, if there's something going on in their lives, if sickness happens. It's okay to let go and take a week off, take 2 weeks off, take the whole summer off. It's it's so flexible, and to enjoy and delight in your children and watch their personalities grow. They're never going to be not little sinners, but neither are you. And so it's a comforting realization to take it all in one day at a time, because the years go so fast. The days go slowly and the years go by fast. I mean, that's what I wish I would have known back then, and to just relax and enjoy it more.
Yeah. Wow. What was the What has been the biggest challenge? I mean, I know, Chris, we're done, but Julie, you still have a couple kiddos left. What has been the biggest challenge as a homeschooling family that you think you guys have faced or have had to deal with? I'll leave it open because I know it's kind of a heavier question. It's like, let me think about that.
I think it's self-pressure to do a whole ton of different things to make sure my kids are learning everything they need to learn, and to get all subjects in, and this math curriculum isn't working, so we got to try 6 others until we find the one that's going to click. And just being very guilt-ridden was the challenge for me, of not doing enough to be the perfect replacement for public school. I need to fill in all the gaps. I need to teach them everything. And I've had to let a lot of that go. I'm not a hugely organized person. And so ideally homeschooling fits very well for me. It should, but I didn't let it at the beginning. I was very guilt-ridden by trying to do all of the subjects, all of the things, all of the curriculum choices. And it was stressful at first.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was my biggest challenge.
Julie?
I'm glad she answered first because I can just say, "Yep, that was it."
Oh, okay.
So I was like, "Well, that's a big challenge," and that was it. I think your own pressure, and I can, you know these things in your head, but then when you're faced with the everyday, like, am I teaching them enough? Are they up to? And you still do the comparison game a little bit. Are they up to par to the public school kids? Are they learning this and that, and they should be here? And what are we supposed to do this year? And I did my student teaching over in England, and they have a whole different system. So you have different levels, and sadly, the U.S. is becoming a little bit more like that, where Europe is kind of coming back off of what they used to do. But England, when I was teaching high school, and everything was literally taught to the test. So I am teaching social studies in England, and I get 1 day for the Holocaust because there's a few questions on the test about the Holocaust, but it's 1 day. You don't get into anything about what it was about how and why it happened, and no critical thinking skills. You just completely, literally teach to test questions. And then the next day you're, in ancient Rome. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. There was no thinking. It was really just teaching to the test. Now, thankfully, I think they've reformed that a little bit. But then you come down these levels, and if you realize again, back to what education is, those challenges should be able to fade away for you. Like, I don't need to compare because this isn't a good comparison, quite frankly. The standardized testing, the teaching to the test, that I'll tell you, to the credit to teachers, they don't like it either. Like, they know they want to be doing better in different things to actually teach critical thinking, things like that, but they are forced to teach these tests in many ways. So to understand how these systems work, how there's different levels, and how your kid doesn't need to compare to the public school kid, or doesn't need to compare to this and that, is a way to overcome that challenge. Just stop comparing, right? I always say that in life, because women especially, we compare a lot. And so when you compare, and your standard for life and education is comparing, you can either become very prideful because you're doing it so much, you're going to be better than someone else. You can always find someone who's, they're not, those kids don't know what they're doing. They're non-school. You know what I mean? Like, you feel prideful. That's not good. Or you compare and see like these other rock star homeschool families, or this public school kid that just got into whatever school, and you think that's the best. And you feel like a complete failure, and you're defeated, and you're defeated for your kids, and you project that onto your kids. I think that's the challenge too, not to project my expectations of what I think should be successful onto my children, but let them discover some of that too.
I'm kind of stuck on the 1 day of Holocaust teaching.
Literally. Yeah, it was crazy.
I'm like, wow, that could be a week easily.
Yeah.
On the importance of learning from that.
I mean, Julie and I, on an Israel trip, got to go see Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Israel. And to soak that all in and dilute it into 1 day of teaching, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, well, I never really saw Yad Vashem because I didn't even get through the first section. Y'all were done because I was weeping.
in the
Wow.
first.
You were a mess.
I was a hot mess.
Jeez. So, trying to kind of put a bow on this, I don't want to keep going over stuff that we've talked about. But for a family, for a mom or a dad who is looking at homeschooling, where would you point them to look first? I mean, obviously you could say, well, Google this, but I mean, are there any resources online? We talked about HSLDA at one point. We talked about some of the curriculums. Is there any like go-to place that you could just get good, solid information?
Other homeschool families, period.
Oh.
That's where you start.
Yep.
Find out who's homeschooling. I love that there's always Facebook groups. I think, I think you were the administrator of one for a while of a very Facebook group.
I forgot about that, but I was, yeah.
But there are people that will find that group on Facebook and just say, hey, where do I start? Are there families? And there's always families willing to meet and talk about it. So that would be my first go-to. Yeah. If you have 0 families that you know of and you're in your local in Minnesota, I'm going to call it out because they're amazing. Hepner's Legacy in Elk River.
Yes.
Go talk to
Oh, yeah.
Nancy.
Yeah, we've been
just
there.
literally show up at their door
Yep.
during business hours. And
We've been there.
yeah.
Hepners, yeah, they're
But yeah, other homeschool families is where you start.
Wow.
Mhm. I would totally agree. You can even, if you're a member of a church, you attend, ask this staff at the church, who can I talk to? Who do you know that homeschools in this church that would be a good resource for me?
Mhm.
Homeschool is so, it's just grown over the last 20 years, I think, just exponentially. I remember talking to our youth pastor at our church years ago, and she had homeschooled, and it was much more difficult. There weren't curriculum packages, there weren't co-ops. She was totally on her own homeschooling and didn't really know all that many around her that were doing it. So she was envious of the fact that we had such a support network in the church and in the community of fellow homeschoolers to bounce things off of. So, yep, check with your church, check on Facebook. There's someone near you that's already doing it.
I think I know the answer, but just so I could get on the record, you guys regret homeschooling at all?
No,
Not a minute.
100% no.
And I would think you would encourage others to homeschool if that was possible for them.
Yep. But if you're thinking about it, I mean, and you're married, you just need to be on board with your spouse. It just has to be this calling that you both feel from the Lord to do this. And I wanted to homeschool before you did, Mike, and it was hard for me, but I realized it would be just an uphill battle if you weren't already on board with it. So the second you were, I was like, "Yep, let's do it." And you're like, "Can we homeschool this year?" Yes, we can. Let's do it.
And I remember some of those conversations. Honestly, were financial.
Yeah.
How do we do this? How are you going to work? Well, I'm not going to work out of the home. It's like, okay, then you got to do something. And, we physically couldn't survive just on my income alone. So, I mean, that's where the piano lessons came in. And I mean, look at that. You've been teaching piano lessons for 20 plus years now.
Yeah.
My children as well.
Yeah. Yep.
It's true. Well, I want to thank both of you so very much for taking some time out. Julie, I know you've got a crazy busy week this week. So we came into the studio here to do some stuff, but appreciate it. Any final words? I'm not saying you have to, but I mean, just I always like to kind of end with maybe there was that question that I forgot to ask or information that you want to share that I just didn't bring up. But any final words, or are we good?
Well, not for me.
All right.
Thanks
Julie?
for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we're good, and I'll get in my car, and on the way home, like, oh, I should have said that.
Yeah, well,
We're all good.
It is what it is. Well, thank you both. I sincerely appreciate it. I know, Julie, you have been our friend for several years, and we appreciate your friendship and the relationship that we have with you and your family. Your kids are our kids, and we've truly believed that over the years. So we thank you, and everybody have a great afternoon. And if you have any questions, get a hold of us.
Thanks for tuning in to Under Investigation. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to dive deeper or stay updated on everything we're working on, check out our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/weareunderinvestigation. We'd also love to hear from you. Got questions, feedback, or a story to share? You can text or call us at 763-634-1210. Your input helps shape the show, so don't be shy. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and keep investigating.